Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Tom Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, weirdos, maggots, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yep. We can just rename this whole thing the Weirdo Show or something.
That's right.
Don and Brian Weirdos.
Weird. The people you're labeled as such by the people with pink and green hair.
Yeah, as you pointed that out when that first came out, and a lot of other people, if you watch or read in the media and whatever, you see a lot of other conservatives, and others pointing out that it's not Trump and Vance and the MAGA crowd that are weirdos. It's the Democrats. It's their policies. It's their followers. They're the weirdos. How do you compare them?
They've really become kind of unhinged from reality. This whole like Tim Walz thing is, has been just hilarious on that. It's like, okay, this guy ducked out of his unit when it was when he found out it had been assigned to war, right? And then he claimed he did go. He did fight in combat, right? And it's like it's all on the record. It's all on. He even talked about having PTSD from combat, right? And he goes, "Oh, they told us to go home and what to do and all this stuff." Right? He's even like talked about it like, this was my experience as a fighting soldier, right? It's on video. It's unarguable. And, these people want to argue about it, right? Oh, it didn't really happen. Well, here's 10 videos of him doing it. Okay, but that's not what he meant. Here's 10 videos saying exactly what he meant. Well, he didn't really use the wrong rank. Well, here's 10 things written, 10, campaign documents or reports he turned in or things he applied for where he used the wrong thing, right? Well, he didn't really mean it. It's just like on and on and on, and they were talking for a good while about, can he stay on the ticket, right? She was scared to death. And I think they've decided to ride it out now. They've hired some of the people who worked for Kerry, and, their advice was to just let it ride and figure it out later. I don't know. I don't know if that's, if it will go away or it seems to be the kind of thing that it'll keep getting brought up pretty much every day between now and November.
Yeah. We haven't seen a really good explanation for some of the things that are out there. That video where he talks about, in essence, carrying a weapon, right? For which Vance called him out.
In war.
Right. In war. Right. So I don't recall seeing.
A guy tells me last night, well, he's not saying he's in combat. I'm like, he's saying he's in war, but it's not combat. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. It's how they're parsing all these things. It's kind of funny too because I don't have cable. I cut the cord several years ago, and I've been tooling around trying to find other ways of watching like Fox News or some other news. But one of the things that like if I go to YouTube, Australian Sky News. So that's a Murdoch operation, right?
Right.
They're brutal. They are just absolutely brutal on the liberals. They've got a segment that they run at least weekly, what they call lefties losing it. They're in Australia, and they're talking about our left, right?
Yeah, that's right.
They don't even talk about their left.
Yeah, and they're brutally effective too. They hammer it. I've seen this.
Yeah. So they're really good at this, and
they're harsher. They pull their punches there because they're worried about going to jail, right? Australia lock you up for dissidents for saying bad things about the government, just as I guess England will now.
Yeah. So I can see that, and I get quite a bit of amusement out of that. But I have I just figured out that on my Roku streaming box, that they never bothered to look at this for some reason. There's a live TV button. I always thought it was just a bunch of junk, but actually a lot of news programs, ABC and Fox has a kind of a digital broadcast that apparently is kind of they basically cull reports from all the Fox stations around the country, and they just run this network. So and the hosts are no one any of us have ever heard of before. But I was watching this morning. They had an interview with the former press secretary for Jill Biden talking about Tim Walz. And so he asked this guy what he thought about, Harris's selection. He says, "Oh, this is a great selection. He's, Tim Walz is right out of central casting, right? He's that whole thing. He's a former football coach. He served in the military, the governor of Minnesota, all this kind of stuff." And I'm like, this is how delusional these people are. I mean, when they start doing this stuff, and no talk about the problems, about the things that we've discussed here with that Walz has, got in his background that he hasn't answered for, that are, that's also an extra liability for the Harris campaign at this point.
Right. But the first thing you said is the whole deal in a nutshell. Right out of central casting, right? But they're trying to get people who look like something rather than people who are something, right? They don't, they want Harris to look like, a tough, smart woman who, weighs all the issues carefully and has divergent stands and can't be easily pigeonholed. When she's down the line, radical leftist who is running from her own record as fast as she can, right? A normal functioning media would cover that, right? This, she's attempting a metamorphosis right before our eyes in the last 100 days before an election, right? But they're not getting any answers to that question. She won't talk to them, and there's a raft of stuff, like, I don't know, on Twitter this morning, and I assume in the media too, where they're starting to try to explain why we don't have a right to any answers from her, and she should just keep doing what she's doing because the press is not a functioning press, and she shouldn't have to take hard questions. It's an unreasonable thing to ask of her. I mean, that's what they're saying.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to come back to the election stuff, because we got plenty of things to talk about with Harris and Trump and Walz and everything. I do want to kind of hit our international side first, because there actually has been movement and things like that. I mean, Ukraine surprised Russia by actually invading Russia.
Yeah.
And, they've got video of troops surrendering and all this stuff. I mean, I don't, Zelensky, they don't have the power, and all the ability to go too deep into Russia. And Russia's now sending out reinforcements and stuff like that. But Russia got caught, totally off guard. I don't know where Putin and his people were looking, but they took their eye off the ball or something like that. And Zelensky's people just said, "Hey, we got an opportunity. Let's go ahead and take it." And they've kind of, which is kind of good, because the news for Ukraine hasn't been all that great lately. It's kind of a stalemate, and the Russians had a little bit more of an advantage. And this kind of shifts the balance a little bit, and forces Putin to say, "Oh my, I don't have total control over the situation after all." And Zelensky said he's not interested in taking over Russia or whatever.
Yeah, holding territory. He doesn't want to hold territory. He just made them take soldiers out of Ukraine and move them back into Russia to defend Russia. Yeah. Also, upset the people on the periphery there who got attacked, right? In those communities, all of a sudden there were, civil defense alarms and all this kind of stuff. That their lives got disrupted. There was a penalty for going to war. So, I think that the extent you can make them, see the suffering it causes is, there's a minor PR victory in there. I don't think you're going to win this on PR anymore. But yeah, they scrambled the game a little. Good for them.
Yeah, imagine being, a Russian general or whoever was in charge of that, of the strategy in the area, and then you have this happen to you. I don't think things are going to go well between that person or any other people that are in, military command and Putin when they saw this happen. It's an embarrassment for Putin.
Yeah, the people who secure the border will be answering some serious questions. They have real accountability over there. They don't have Kim Cheadle sitting around for 3 weeks after she let the president get shot, right? They go ahead and take care of business over there.
Yeah, it's if we were seeing their names in the newspaper on the internet, they may be quietly erased from
Yeah,
those
their
sources.
families should be worried.
Yeah. You might want to make some alternative plans really quickly before Putin reacts.
Could be time for a vacation. Don't know.
We're going to give you a vacation from Siberia.
Yeah, it's beautiful this time of year.
Yeah.
And for the next 2 or 3 weeks. But after that, it is what it is.
Yeah, this could be rather interesting, I think. Anyway, and then we have the situation in the Middle East, because we had Israel making some targeted strikes, taking out some bad people, as we talked about, Hezbollah leaders, Hamas leaders. Now they're apparently bracing for potential attack from Iran, because there's been a lot of noise, and I guess the U.S. is sending some ships out there and some things like that.
Yeah, we're rushing some ships into the theater
and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how big a threat that is, but it definitely, they're also in the midst of, they're supposed to be, I'm not supposed to be going back to the negotiating table on peace in Gaza tomorrow. But, once again, I mean, the other side is really not interested in peace, right?
Right. That's right. They want the whole enchilada. They want Israel to not exist and the Jews to die, right? That's their compromise. They might settle for the Jews could go somewhere where they never have to look at them again and still live, but they can't stay in Israel. All right. So there's nothing to negotiate. You can negotiate if you want to give back the hostages, you can reduce, but there's still, there was Hezbollah was bombing northern Israel last night, right? I mean, it's not like people think, well, after October 7th last year, it's all been revenge. It's just Israel just taking it out on Hamas for doing this, right? But that's not true. They're still attacking. They're still lobbing rockets into Israel, most days, and other measures that they're taking. So, stop, and then you will see they will stop, right? They don't want to have wars. No one wants to have wars,
Yeah, I mean, there's a risk if you live, in certain areas in Israel. I mean, it's not like Israel is completely safe from attack, because Hezbollah is still on the offensive in a lot of ways. But Israel is trying to eliminate, Hezbollah and try to get these guys out and get these terrorists out. Take care of the terrorists that have been just, have been killing their people, have been capturing their people, and just raping their people.
For years and years, for a long time.
Right. The numerous crimes seem to just go right over the head, of liberals and leftists and all these activists who think that these guys are the victims, and not the aggressors. And it makes me crazy. I mean, it does make me want to kind of compare out, that this continues to this day. What are we, we're 330. I mean, this has been a slog. This has not been as long as, Ukraine and Russia, but it is continuing to move in that direction. This is, Israel has dug in their heels and said, we're making a stand here, and we are going to try to educate the world about what's going on here. Please listen. But the left, has been pretty effective in fighting back, because they have the media on their side and others, and all these reports out of the Ministry of Health, which have been taken as gospel truth as to what's happening in there, without saying, can we question, can we look at the source here and see exactly who these people are? Have we not?
Right. Something's coming on that, by the way. So the Washington Post this morning was talking about they're nearing 40,000 dead, 40,000 people the Israelis killed. I don't know where or how they get that number, right? But that's going to be a big number. And when they hit that, there's going to be a lot of talk about it, and probably some more violence.
Yeah, I mean,
and the number, as you say, is whole cloth. Who knows?
Right, and these kinds of reports and these kinds of things put a lot of pressure on Netanyahu and his government, which is a little shaky to begin with, and there's so many different things that are going on there. But you know, Israel needs to stand firm, and I think you mentioned about just how overall general support for Israel is pretty strong in this country, though with a lot of Democratic circles, it's not as strong as it probably should be or used to be. The left has taken hold, and created this pro-Hamas faction that's kind of changed even the Democrats on this.
Yeah, that's right. So the Democrats have a problem here because they're getting ready for their convention, right? And I think, I want to get the numbers right on this, but like 159 pro-Hamas groups have applied to be in the protest zone at the convention. One Jewish group applied and got denied. So, I mean, that's where they're going on this. And the thing about it is you can already see one of the few statements that Harris has made to the press since she's become the candidate 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, or how long it was, is she has said, we're going to demand a ceasefire of Israel, right? And it's like, well, they're not, you got to demand a ceasefire of both, right? And, the problem is that the other people have not stopped shooting at Israel. And then, but what the Hamas people want them to do is to deny any more weapons sales to Israel. And I think that I don't think she can win out of that one. She says she won't be elected. If she says she won't, they'll blow up her convention. So, and the time for choosing is now. She's not going to be able to put it off much longer. And, she tried to get these people before her speech in Detroit, get them in a room and get them to shut up, let her get elected, right? And they wouldn't do it, right? They went out after the meeting and went to the rally and heckled her at the rally. So whatever they heard in that meeting did not satisfy them to lay off of Harris all the way through November. They're still wanting more. So, at that convention, they're going to make demands she cannot ignore, and there's no easy way out of the box for her to do it. I think the strategy is going to be the strategy they're using for everything, which is to try to ignore it, to try to just to pretend like it does not happen.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily the pro-Hamas faction is overly large, but they're very noisy. And so
exactly.
they're amplified. Their voice is amplified, and I think it worries her. And her campaign people, how do they contain them while they try to find a strategy for Israel that works? So they're like you said, they're in the box. He's kind of in a pickle on how to navigate all of this. And the convention. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's possibly it could blow up because of this, depending upon what she says. I mean, that may be the more interesting part of the convention coming up.
The other thing is, the difference is that you just said, right? Trump is not dithering over this issue, right? He is where he is. He's not going to change. He doesn't care what the press or the politics of the situation say, right? She is negotiating her principles, right, in public. She is saying, what should my line in the sand be on this, right? Because I don't personally know. He has the moral clarity of he's on Israel's side. Israel got attacked. Israel's defending itself. She can't say that. She's way, way far off from being able to say that, right? Her party will not put up with that. And so she has got to try to pretend to be something she's not. And so then you're choosing the something. What is the something that we're going to be that we're not? And so you've got to slice and dice and look at your electorate and try to hit the sweet spot and say the exact right thing without saying too much or too little. And, she's never really proven adept at that. And B, she's got an even bigger problem now because, everybody's watching and there's no wiggle room whatsoever. It's about a 70% issue. If she goes against Israel, she probably cannot win the election. If she goes against Hamas, those people will make it hell on earth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what one of the problems. And you're right about the Trump thing. I mean, Trump has made it pretty clear where he stands, and that's what you have to do. You have to take a stand, and his supporters will be behind him on this. He may not get some of the independents and others who may be on the fence on Israel, or who may think may have been
right. Some people will not like it. Some people think they control our military and all that, and it turns them away from Trump. And it's like, okay, but that's who he is. He's not negotiating with himself. He's not asking everybody's opinions. He's not trying to mollify people and make an opinion that everybody can sort of say, okay, I'll go along with that one, right? He's got a conviction, and he knows he knows what he wants, right? So all he's talking about is how to make happen what he wants, and what he wants is what 70% of the American people want.
Yeah. All right. So another international issue that's still out there is Nicolas Maduro, who basically is not. He's doing everything he can to stay in power, which is jailing people. I guess he's getting his Supreme Court to do stuff and whatnot. I mean, the U.S. I guess was pushing or negotiating for some kind of exile or something like that. That type of some asylum type of thing. Those things seem to have kind of bogged down or whatever. And I guess the guy who won is willing to make some compromises too, which I don't think he needs to do. But is Venezuela kind of still is that a powder keg? Is this going to be how much of a problem is this for the United States? I mean, it's still the Biden administration in charge of trying to figure this out.
Well, I mean, Trump could make a campaign issue out of it and say, this was one of those countries you were supposed to see about the demand to, curtail the demand on immigration here. And, there's a apartment. There was a story yesterday. There's an apartment building, a big apartment building in Denver that has been, or Colorado, Denver area. I'm not sure it's in the city, that has been taken over by a Venezuelan gang. And they have such complete control of it that the police won't go against them. And they've just expelled the residents. If you lived there, they just tell you to get out. It's now theirs. So they've just helped themselves to an apartment building in Colorado. What do we do about that? So as for Maduro himself, it looks to me, I could be wrong, but it looks to me like he's withstood it again. That he's retained power despite badly losing an election again. I don't really see what happens now. I don't think the U.S. is going to intervene. Our president's too weak. Our military is overcommitted and may not be fit for such a job anyway. There's a real climate in the country against nation building and meddling in the affairs of others. Trump has always been that way, and now the other guy is mind your own business, and so they can't really, it's outside of the policy sphere of both parties now to help them to do anything about this. So, I think that Maduro is probably your guy for another 5 years.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, what's the incentive for Maduro to really listen to the U.S. when you've got a president who's out, basically?
Right.
It's over for him. You don't really know who the next president will be, and so he can stick around and play this game for a while. At this point. So you got
that's right. Yeah, I don't see there needs to be a mechanism for getting rid of him, and the soldiers don't object to shooting on their own people. So, I mean, that's usually the mechanism, is when you sick the army on the citizenry, and the army's like, that's my family, I'm not going to shoot them. That's when these things break down. But that hasn't happened, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen in Venezuela.
Right. It's so those in the opposition, they better watch their backs, because Maduro is ruthless.
Yeah, he got to be where he is for a reason.
Yep. Okay, so we've now got 82 days until the election. So that's coming up hard and fast. And yet it's even shorter schedule when you think that early voting ballots are going to start being mailed in North Carolina on September 6th, and there's a bunch of other states throughout September that will follow. So the calendar is even shorter than that. I mean, if you're going to go and vote in person, you've got about 82 days, right? But if you're a mail-in voter or absentee voter or whatever, in a lot of states, you will be casting your vote starting in September, going through October. You know, you'll have locked in your vote. So the campaign is kind of short. Harris has been getting very favorable polls overall. That still may change. Maybe she'll get a bump from the convention next week. I don't know. But it's one of the things. I don't know. You remember how Biden didn't do diddly squat in 2020, right? We had COVID, he could be in basement, and he rode the victory road, the anti-Trump sentiment. Harris hasn't talked to the press really for the 20.
Yeah, she's doing even less than him. Yeah.
So she's been more unavailable to the press. I mean, she has these rallies, but she won't do any press events. Doesn't lay out anything. We don't really know what she stands for, except that we've got we know what she said in the past, and she seemingly is reversing her position on things, right? So she's flip-flopping on stuff. So it's just who is Kamala Harris today versus who was Kamala Harris 3.5 weeks ago, and what are people getting? But there's just kind of this wave of enthusiasm, sigh of relief from the base, Democrats, that it's not Joe Biden, but Democrats. What are you getting? Do you know what you're buying right now? I don't think you do, because she hasn't said anything about who she is.
Well, I mean, they don't care. Their animating principle is that she's not Trump. So her policy positions, they matter, but they don't matter a whole lot, to be frank about it. So Trump is more popular than he's ever been. He's at about 45 or 46 percent nationally, which is that he's never been any higher than that at any point in national RCP averages, things like that. The entire time he's been in politics, he is up to like 91% of the base of the Republicans are for him. About 90% of Democrats are for her. Independents, he has about a 4 or 5 point lead. About 10% are undecided. So for her to win, she has to get about 8 out of 10 of the undecideds. That seems unlikely given the various problems and inability to answer a question. I mean, those people, you're going to have to come out and explain to them why they should vote for you, because no one has been able to convince them to vote one way or another yet, right? I mean, you're this late in the game. I've known who I was going to vote for in this election for a long, long time. Probably you have too, right? But for someone who's still legitimately undecided, it's about 10% of the 30% who are independents, right? That is the universe. That's what you're going for. So, that's not a lot of people. They know where to find them and who they are and so forth. And she is not making a lot of headway with them. She is, the people who were indifferent to voting because the candidate was Biden have come home. They're like, now that it's her, I'm all fired up, and I'll go to rallies and give money and put a sign in my yard and all that. And good for them. That's who they are. But she doesn't have anything going for her that he didn't have going for her, other than she's not Biden. She's not viewed as about to die.
Yeah, I mean, RFK is still out there. RFK Jr. is still out there, but he's fading. I mean, he's the
he's losing
about the Bear Club in New York, and just adds to the bizarre nature of things that RFK Jr. has said and done. And
right. And when you get this close, people stop worrying about candidates they know cannot win. Right? You're down now to who can win.
Yeah, they're just they looked at that. I mean, I think a lot of this is, with Biden dropping out, the focus now is on, Harris versus Trump, and not looking anywhere else. It's like, these are the two candidates we're going to choose from. RFK Jr. is like way out there on the fringe. We can't do this. But I mean, that whole the Bear Cub story was the story for like days. It seemed it couldn't get away. It was so bizarre.
It displaced Mitt Romney from the animal weirdness Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
tied his dog on the car.
Yeah. It's like, you don't have to worry, Mitt. You don't have to worry about that anymore, because the RFK Jr. may have now topped you by a large margin, in a race that a lot of people are paying attention to. But there's still, there's still a lot of, people who are disaffected people who are not happy with, with the Biden administration, and who understand that Harris is part of that administration, and won't vote for her, when it comes time to it. But it's just it's interesting to see how, I don't know. I mean, I kind of wonder, whether or not she will really get much of a bounce, after the convention, because she's already kind of had I kind of think she's already kind of had her bounce.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the convention is going to be somewhat anticlimactic. I mean, I guess they're rolling out Obama and the Clintons and things like that. I don't know who else they're throwing into the mix there. But I don't necessarily consider, Kamala Harris as a great orator.
Right. I don't think they turn around a lot with this convention. I think they kind of come out of it where they are at best, and then it's a slog, because she'll have a debate there pretty soon, and Trump's going to get a town hall. She's not going to show up on the 4th of September, right? So Trump will get a free town hall on Fox News, answer anything you want. That'll be, NABJ, the Aiden, the news conference the other day, the talk with Elon Musk, all these things that Trump, put himself into risky situations as a candidate, right? Hostile questions. The NABJ was, completely hostile, ridiculously hostile questions, right? And she won't do it, right? It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter the answers Trump is giving, right? They try to make a big, he slurred his words and he said such and such. It's like, it doesn't matter. He's answering questions. He's taking on these people. And like, if you listen to the Musk conversation the other night, whatever you think of either of them, they sounded like rational people who, are powerful and have made a lot of money, having a pretty interesting conversation about, where things stand and what lies ahead in the future, right? And, you can disagree on policy matters and think things are handled wrong or whatever, but, he looked sane and smart and on the ball, right? And, the next day it was like, he was slurring and he's totally losing it mentally. And I knew when I saw that, I'm like, okay, they think that, like, they said, the other side said Joe Biden was old and we had to take him off the ticket. And now, so we're just going to say Trump is old and try to force him off the ticket. And it's like, well, no, there's a difference there. We watched that debate and Trump was on the ball and Biden clearly was not, right? So them trying to make an issue out of age doesn't work. They try it, but it doesn't work. But Trump is in, he's the most popular he's ever been. So, the idea that they're it's all pell-mell and she's going to win every state and all that is nonsense. She is at the height of her bubble. The campaign, the convention, especially if the Hamas people make trouble, may actually hurt her. She may actually lose points off of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a risk for that. And one of the big things about a convention is that the delegates go there to vote for the candidate, to actually nominate the candidate. Well, they've done this by this strange, voice vote or electronic voting. They did this all in advance. So one of the highlights for delegates, where they can say, I went and I cast my vote, at the Chicago convention. That's not happening, right? I mean, it's already happening. She is the de facto nominee. I mean, they'll still deal with platform issues and whatever parties and stuff like that to go on, during the convention. But they, the whole nature of the convention, has changed as a result of the way they rushed into this thing to get her on there. No one cast a vote for Kamala Harris for president, during this primary, in the sense of she didn't have any, she didn't win the delegates that way. She won the delegates by default, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if they'll do it like a call, go through it and make the states vote, go through the motions of voting, even though they voted, just to show that there's some kind of democratic imprimatur to this at some level, right? However, made up and so forth it may be, right? That they did do something, right? So, I mean, I don't know.
That would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah, but they may be able to fit in another speech by a far left pinko or whatever, and not want to do that. Who knows what they want to do? But the other thing is like the main function of the conventions, other than to take the vote, is to fire up the base, right? I mean, if you listen to Republican speeches, they're all like, okay, now we got to get out there and register voters and knock doors and write op-eds and do the stuff it takes to get elected. And make sure you go out there and you work from now till November, right? And oh yeah, we're going to work. Okay, how will they notice if there's any increased effort over what they're doing now, right? I mean, the Democrats went hog wild when they got this new lease on life, and didn't have the 82-year-old guy on the ticket anymore. And so, the base is already home. The base is already doing whatever it's going to do. There's really not much to be gained by sitting around Chicago yapping about all this.
Yeah, and there's also the possibility that Tim Walz could outshine Harris. Probably the better speaker.
He's probably the better speaker, and no one will be there to interrupt him about the stolen valor and all that kind of stuff.
Right. But it'll be interesting to see, because will we see these speeches that, when you evaluate them as a whole, will this show a vision of a left-wing America, being the future, or what kind of vision are they going to portray? Because we know what they believe, we know who these people are. And how are they going to try to go in a different direction, to say, as a flip flop and be less progressive, less left wing, and in order to try to appeal to more voters. But like we've talked here, I don't know that what they say will, for the independents, there's such a small sliver of voters that are probably left for them to try to find and lock down, that I guess it is exactly what they said. It is fire up the base. And if the base wants left-wing politics, they're probably going to get it. And they're going to probably be very happy with it. I mean, what's left of the squad will probably be delight, to hear that. Right. So, Bernie Sanders.
I guess, speaking of the squad, I guess you saw Little Monkey Business and Ilhan Omar's primary last night. Like 9:57, there was 5% of the vote in. 10:02, there was 99% of the vote in. So, like, it all came in 5 minutes. Yeah, that's true. That's the other thing is, the Walz we haven't even started on. The Republicans have not even started on. Is he's been to China more than 30 times. Almost all of them paid by the Chinese government. What for? He honeymooned in China. Did the Chinese pay for that? Why? What are they paying for? What did they hope to get out of that? And what out of that? The accusation is that they are paying for people they're grooming people they see as a future leader. So how did they come to see him as a future leader, as someone that they should be grooming? How did they pick Tim Walz of all people and say, that guy, we need to be giving him free trips and treating him well and trying to convince him to be on our side? He's a regular old guy. He's a soldier and a football coach. What about him, said future vice president to the Chinese? Yeah,
and we have with the way China's been going, and their crackdown on human rights and things like this. I mean, things that Walls has done have looked very cozy, where we shouldn't be cozy enough to China and to Xi. I mean, that, if the relationship is getting a little fractured, so be it. If Trump's tariffs are going to be, kind of the standard policy, because the Biden administration has a lot of tariffs on Chinese goods as well, then that's it. Once again, and I don't think neither you or I are big tariff guys, but we've seen that some of the tariffs actually kind of work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, earnings went up, inflation went down, and some of it was, we weren't heavily reliant on what they were giving us, and they were more heavily reliant on what we were giving them.
So what about what are your feelings about this thing about the Trump campaign being hacked?
Well, I take them at their word that it was the Iranians. Might have been somebody else. Maybe they don't really know. I think the reason that these media outlets have not pumped out a lot of salacious stories about it is because the Trump campaign is probably aware that there was a high probability it would get hacked at some point, and there's probably not a doggone thing on those emails that would make a news story, right? I think that they learned their lesson about don't put anything embarrassed. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have to. That's a long-term strategy. They spent a lot of money on it, and they've been very detailed and gotten really into the weeds to get it right, to find people like Tim Walsh. So, yeah, Bob's right about that. But yeah, I think that I think if there was something damaging in there, these media outlets would have jumped all over it. They're not protecting Trump. Zero of them want to protect Trump. So. I don't think there's anything damaging. I think that's the reason you haven't heard.
Yeah, because there hasn't been a ton of reporting on it, and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting on the one hand, but I think you're right. I mean, I think that nothing's so damning that they could make some salacious report out of it. So they've kind of decided, well, we can move on from that. I did want to go back, and I forgot to say one thing about that former press secretary for Joe Biden. That something he said that also kind of amused me in the interview with Fox was just that the guy conducting the interview said, "What do you think that the Bidens will do in the future? What's their future?" And he said, "Well, they'll probably go to the beach. They haven't used their beach house very much, right? And then also they'll probably write some books about their 4 years in the White House." And I don't know. I like, you haven't used the beach house too much. That's interesting. And who's going to be writing the book? Certainly not Joe. It's going to be hard enough to get Joe to remember what he did, during his 4 years.
Yeah, the last time he went to a ghostwriter, that didn't work out too well either. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I wish I was going to be here 40, 50 years from now to look back and see what history books said about Joe Biden, right? Because, a lot of this presidency is a deep, dark secret, because he's obviously, non compos mentis for large chunks of it, and they somehow run the country, and they somehow made the decisions, and, we've gotten some stuff wrong, but we haven't been bombed into smithereens yet or whatever. So, we're being kept afloat, and we don't really know how. And I don't know if there's any interest to the Bidens or much interest to anyone else to tell that story.
So the New York Times has put out a story or something about Hunter Biden and the request that he made to get some help. And I guess this was after a long time of requesting documents from the State Department. And how much of anything that Hunter Biden does? I mean, he's still facing tax evasion charges, I guess, compared to when his father was going to run for re-election. I mean, Hunter needs the music or whatever that will wind up being. But will people pay as much attention to Hunter Biden with Joe basically fading out?
Well, I mean, if Joe's selling influence and you can prove that, then that's something she would have a hard time completely denying or getting out from under. But but yeah, it's probably they were geared up to run against Biden. They had some really good stuff on him, and it did give her a little reprieve that when they switched.
Yeah.
I'll
So
go along with that.
you mentioned Trump and Elon Musk in their conversation on X, Twitter. I don't want. I just want. I want to call it Twitter. I mean, it's like, every time I see anything on the news, X, formerly known as Twitter. It's kind of, to me,
Right.
it's like,
That's right. So, like, I don't know if you saw this, but he had a thing on this week. I believe it was earlier this week. Musk saying, "Should I keep calling it X or should I change the name back to Twitter?" And then he had a full day or two of replies to that. And then he said, "Come on, you really think Twitter's better?" And there was a full day of replies to that. So, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. I think he wanted the crowd to tell him that X was better than Twitter, but because that kind of makes it his, but that's not what they did. So I don't know what he's going to do about that, but he is thinking about that issue. And I wrote in and just said, there's a verb form of Twitter, right? To tweet, right? To what's the comparable thing of X? It's to tweet, right? If you say you're going to write something on X, you're saying you're going to tweet, right? So, that would seem to say that, Twitter was better than X.
Yeah, I mean, that part of it has gotten people kind of all over the board because, I'll still say tweet. I think a lot of us will still say tweet. Some people say anything you do on X is now just a post. I posted on X, right? But there's still a ton of websites that still have the Twitter verb, right? And the T, right? They're still doing that. If you want to share a story, the X isn't replaced it yet. Maybe they're hedging their bet. I don't know. It makes me think like, how about the Washington Commanders, formerly known as the Redskins?
Right. Yeah, right. You don't really hear that. I mean, we learn who the Washington Commanders are. You don't need to know their past name to understand who they are and who they were.
Right. But this one you did. There is that little possibility that the new owner might switch it back, right? They have that.
Right. He's talking about it.
They've kind of got the logo out there a little bit, on the skirt, with Dan Quinn and stuff like that, making people like, what's going on here? I don't think I ran this one.
Right, that's right. All right, that's exactly right. Okay, as I always say at these points, how to tell when they really have Trump on doing something actually wrong. You can watch how they all behaved, how Trump behaved, and how the accusers behaved when they actually had the goods on Trump. The one time they did was the Billy Bush, the back of the movie truck or whatever, when he said to grab him by the genitals or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, he didn't think he was talking to anybody, but he was on a hot mic. Don't ever assume, if you're Donald Trump, don't ever assume that someone's not listening, because they usually are, right? So, they didn't wait for proof or background or are we sure this is true? They didn't wait 5 seconds for that. They rushed on the air and said, we have caught Trump saying these words. And what did Trump do? Because it happened to be on the day of one of the presidential debates, right, in 2020 or 2016 when this came out. Trump walked right up to the microphone and said, I did this. It wasn't my best hour. I was on. I thought we were alone, just two guys talking in the back of a bus, but someone heard it and people were deeply offended, and I don't blame them, and I'm sorry. Right? So when Trump knew he was wrong, he immediately took responsibility and apologized. Okay, so when he doesn't do that, and people say, "Oh, he just won't take responsibility," he will if he admits he's wrong, right? If he thinks what you're saying was wrong on his part, he will take responsibility. He will apologize, like normal people do, right? But they don't have him, and they think they have him. Remember, it's the words we talked about earlier. Hollywood casting, right? Straight out of central casting. They want it to look like something. They do not go to the trouble to make it be like that.
Yeah, and I want to say something on the technical side of the whole conversation with that. It says, Ron DeSantis tried to make a campaign announcement, that way that got fouled up with the technical glitches. They had another glitch, with this whole conversation for which Musk blamed DDoS attacks. But part of this is you got to understand. I mean, you're somebody who wants to get into this conversation and listen to this thing, and you may be constantly hitting and trying to refresh, trying to get in because you can't get in. That's not for those people who legitimately want to get in. That's not a DDoS, a denial of service attack. That is like, I want in on this because I'm really interested. There are probably hundreds of thousands of people that wanted to be a part of this that couldn't get in because for whatever reason, Twitter X was still not stress tested enough. They still hadn't gone through the system enough to handle the demand. And that's something that Musk, if he wants to keep doing these things, he can draw a lot of people for this. Because I mean, Elon Musk is a draw, just in and of himself. And then you put him with Donald Trump, and that's like a home run. But if they don't prepare the platform with capacity and everything else, then
they tested it with it was pretty funny. They tested it with 28,000 people on it. Right? Will this work with 28,000 people on it? Right? And they ended up with about 1.3 million actually on the call, and he says that the it's now over 1 billion people have seen it. So 28,000 was not enough. It should have tested for more.
Yeah. I mean, that was too small a sample size to figure out what was going on there. So they're going to have to keep working on this. I mean, he's on the right track, but they just haven't put this down, the way they need to. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder too if President Musk was he's so. If anything's so distracted, he's running so many companies. How does this guy actually pay attention to everything? What does he really like the most? Does he really want to spend more time on Tesla? Does he want to spend more time on SpaceX, on X itself, the Boring Company, his OpenAI,
Solar City,
the artificial intelligence thing? I mean, there's like 6 or 7 different things he's developed. The guy is absolutely brilliant, but I mean. You can't effectively run all those companies, simultaneously.
Well, I mean, I think he's got a formula, right? He goes after the government subsidies. That's why I don't think that he cares that Biden. I mean, that Trump is saying he will end the EV mandate, right? Because he's like, I'll just sell in a private market. That's probably better for me anyway. Forces more innovation, makes better, solid competitors. If government's not maintaining it, if you really have to actually make the product attract customers.
Yeah, Musk knows. I mean, I think I'm sure his government relations people and things like that. We've got an army of people that are watching all these potential changes and saying, "This is what we need to do to adapt. We'll lower prices to offset this government move if they do it, or we'll do this if they do that." But yeah, he has built his wealth on government subsidies, but as I told somebody yesterday, that's fine. I mean, he took advantage of what was offered to him, and he didn't do anything illegal. He just went ahead and the government said, you do this, you provide this, solar panels. There's going to be all kinds of credit for selling them, for leasing them, or whatever. Do that. You're going to sell EVs. You can get up to $7,500 credit for selling new EVs for the first 2,000 cars that you sell. Boom. So it's just one thing after another that spurred every single business that he's been involved in. And then government contracts for SpaceX. So the government trough has been very, very good for Elon Musk.
Yeah, and I think he is going to go rescue the astronauts up there, by the way.
Right. I mean, but that won't happen.
Who Boeing cannot manage to bring home.
Yeah, Boeing. They have trouble with their aircraft, and here's their next big thing is their Starliner, spacecraft,
It's even worse. Yeah.
And they've issued, and these poor people are stuck and may not get, they may not get back to 2025 when SpaceX sends something, sends a ship up there. Um, I guess they'll be fine, but it's just like, what else can go wrong for Boeing? I mean, I think Boeing's fighting back and saying, no, it's going to be perfectly safe and things like that. You're talking about one thing about flying around our stratosphere here, airlines across the country. It's a whole other thing when you're trying to get somebody back from any part of space and then re-enter our atmosphere. That you got to make sure everything is working right. One little thing goes wrong, disaster could be the next step, and you don't want that to happen. So we're crossing our fingers that everything goes well for them as well. Another thing too, Harris was talking about, when he's saying flip-flopping. So she had this, she's all big on Medicare for all, right? And apparently now it's not so much, at this stage. She's yet another thing that she's flip-flopping on is, maybe this isn't the policy I need to be, pushing too much.
Yeah, that's right. That's one. It's like, they started out calling Trump Hitler, which they've stopped doing largely since he got shot. And they started out, he was going to ruin Social Security, Medicare, and now they backed off of that because they looked at the numbers and, somebody's got to have to do something with Social Security and Medicare or it's not sustainable. So, that's also, they looked at fracking, right? And they're like, we can't really make fracking illegal. We may like to, maybe, our fever dream or whatever, but, fracking's not going to be illegal. It's going to have to stay legal. So, there are a lot of, when you're a leftist, right, you're in a lot of policy holes. You do things not because they're right, but because they make you feel the best, right? And you don't consider the trade-offs. And in fact, you think the idea of considering the trade-offs is itself subversive. So, you end up with a lot of things that you can't defend. And I think that's what they're finding out now. And it's probably a big part of why you're not seeing her on the campaign trail is you're not seeing her talk to press, whatever, is because, they're actually working out. Like I say, they don't really have principles. So they're actually working out what they're going to say to all this stuff. They're not set up.
Yeah. And then we finally, we have the no tax on tips, which apparently kind of surprised some of her own people that she went out and she said that. Apparently some people were not ready for her to say that. Were surprised that she said that, which put Trump, sent Trump off about, taking his ideas and things like that. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't like this idea to begin with because there's a lot of issues. I mean, it's political fodder. You can try to win votes by saying you're going to do that. And apparently there are people who are writing on receipts. It's like, if you vote for Trump, you won't have to pay tax on your tip. Well, that's gonna take a long road to get that done to begin with, and they still have they haven't really studied it for sure as to how much that would cost and how many other industries. There's someone who would maybe try to say, no tax on tip. We'll move more of our workers to, where we'll claim that this part of the income is now tips. There could be a whole bunch of things that haven't been thought of right now that could be disastrous, for the country in that sense in terms of the tax rate. But I'm just gonna wait and see how this develops. I don't know that no tax on tips really sways a lot of voters.
Well, I mean, she said it when she said it because she was talking to the culinary union in Las Vegas, right? So it was completely opportunistic and completely ripped from Trump's playbook, which they then tried to pretend wasn't true, even though there's really no other explanation for it. So, they lied about that. They're going to lie about a lot of this stuff. I agree with you. I don't think it's a constitutional policy either. I think it's I don't think it's a consequential. It probably is constitutional. I don't think it's consequential. And I think, when people start looking into the, how that actually works and what you could actually put in a bill and get it passed by Congress, I think whoever wins and tries to, do good on that promise, make good on that promise, is going to run up against some roadblocks, frankly. All right. I doubt that it's not as easy as just declaring yourself against taxes.
Okay, quickly take us out.
Quickly take us out. What else is on here? We talked about Omar. We talked about Florida. Okay, another thing that's on here is like Florida has 1 million more registered Republicans and Democrats. Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, all these battlegrounds, Georgia, Arizona, huge advantage for Republicans. Many more Republicans registered since the last election than Democrats. That's my last note.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Please, as always, stay healthy and well and safe. Please remember that we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we hope you survive the convention next week. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you again.